So, when we're having these conversations, because of what's been going on in the industry for many years, does digital workplace just mean VDI? And how do we kind of have those conversations with customers?
You know, I really don't think so. Maybe at one time you could argue it did, but more and more times now, users don't need a full desktop. They need access to an application. And they can get to that application from a cell phone, from a tablet, from a laptop, from a desktop. There are times you don't need a full desktop, whether it's Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. You don't need a desktop anymore. So that I think right there eliminates VDI as the only option for digital workplace because now you can have a user who can log into Microsoft for a Power BI report. They can log into ServiceNow to check out a ticket. They can log into SAP to do whatever they need to do in SAP or Salesforce. Any of these solutions, they can get to it whether it's software as a service and they just go to a website or the employer is publishing everything to them, whether it's shortcuts or through a portal. Many firms still call them portals, so I'm going to go with that. But whether they have this landing page, portal, what have you, employers can commonly provide this solution, these solutions in one place, and they don't need a full desktop to do it. So I think all the experience and the access to the data, it's the entire workplace, whether
Yeah,
there's
it's every application, right? SaaS-based apps, client server apps, hosted applications. I think, one of the things that we're seeing is that even things like leveraging conditional access. We've talked about that quite often with a lot of customers is being able to determine which of your portfolio applications require you to be maybe on the corporate network from a corporate device with a VPN client or through a VDI session versus ones that you're like, you know what, anybody can access it from anywhere. It's low priority data, or that we don't need as much compliance type rules. So no, I think those are relevant because I think, like you said, it started off with, you know, virtualized applications 20, 30 plus years ago in some cases, and still a viable option for a lot of customers, a lot of organizations, a lot of use cases. But now we're running into those. All right, well, what else is possible, right? Enterprise browser functionality. We'll talk about that during some of the conversations. But even just the local management type tools, leveraging local devices. So, oh, those are some good insights. Anything else you want to follow up with before we jump into some other segments in terms of employee experience?
uh no, I mean I think even firms that don't necessarily believe or invest in things like digital employee experience probably should, because I'm sure they've had turnover over the last few years because somebody wasn't happy with the tools. And whether they like their manager or not is irrelevant if they can't do their job and they're miserable logging into their machine every day. So really taking some time to review the process and see how your end users are functioning, whether it's customers or contractors or business partners or employees are using your systems, you can make it a better experience for everybody at fairly minimal cost. So that's really my takeaway is it's important. If you don't have end users, you probably don't have a business.
Yeah, and as a user, if you don't have access to data or applications, there's you got problems there too.
Exactly.
All right, so let's have some conversations on business impact around having a good digital workplace strategy. I know one I personally love to talk about is talent acquisition and retention. You already talked about the retention part. I know I've had a lot of conversations with customers around, again, post COVID, everybody had to be hired within 30, 40, 50 miles of the office,
Right.
of a physical corporate office. You had a couple of people that were allowed to work from home, and then COVID hit, and everybody had to work remote. And in some cases, over the last couple of years, those users have moved away, or requested to move away from the corporate office. Taking care of elderly parents, moving to a cheaper location, just getting out of certain areas, whatever they wanted, like whatever the reason was. But that retention and acquisition kind of strategy, I think, is something that a lot of organizations are struggling with, right? And we've had numerous conversations on why the digital workplace strategy is helping and address those. Any other comments on that?
Well, the other side of that, I think that's fairly compelling is because we have such mature and understood solutions now for how to access data and how to work collaboratively over many, many miles or states or continents. You've seen big tech firms pull up out of the Bay Area in California or Silicon Valley, move to Texas, move to the Midwest because they can, leaving their manufacturing site in Silicon Valley or leaving a research lab. They're moving their headquarters because their leadership and their business units can still work seamlessly because now they have voice and video calling that can be fairly optimized. Like you're right next to each other. You can have access to data that feels like milliseconds instead of states or continents away. And because we have these solutions in place, businesses can pick up and move. You can hire from anywhere, you can work from anywhere, and that goes for the brick and mortar business as well as every employee.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is let's just say it was a place that hired a bunch of rocket scientists. Let's just say that.
Okay.
And what they were struggling with was they had to find the best rocket scientist within 30 miles of their office because of where it was located. It was costly, and it was very tough to get to, traffic wise. And so they were finding that talent was hard to find. Then they also found that the people that they had hired and maintained them, they're smartest guys that were like, hey, look, I'm either getting a job offer that's in another city or I want to move. I love this place. I want to get out of here. So now this kind of having a strategy around the digital workplace has allowed them to really still secure the data, maintain their identity and manage the device uh, through many miles away now, globally, in fact, and they could hire the best rocket scientist or retain the best rocket scientist without necessarily having to keep them in the office.